On a quiet autumn afternoon, a man flying a drone above a dense stretch of forest stares at his screen in disbelief. His drone hovers over a waterfall, its mist curling in the sunlight like a veil. But just beyond the rocks, half hidden by moss and roots, the camera catches something that should not be there. It looks like the outline of a cabin no map ever marked, no hiker ever reported. And inside, a shadow moves. For nearly 20 years, this forest has carried a secret. The disappearance of a young girl, last seen wandering these woods. Now, a chance flight of a drone may have uncovered the truth. But the truth is darker, stranger, and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. The story begins with Rachel Monroe, a 36-year-old investigative journalist. Rachel is sharp, relentless, and haunted by her past. She grew up in the small mountain town of Pinebrook, a place where the air smells of pine sap and wood smoke, and where people rarely forget or forgive. Rachel had been only 16 when her childhood friend, Lila Carter, vanished. One October night, Lila left her house to walk home from a church event. She never arrived. Search parties combed the woods, helicopters scanned from above, dogs sniffed the ground. Nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no body. Just silence. Now, 2 decades later, Rachel has returned. The town hasn't changed much. The diner still serves burnt coffee, the mill still bellows smoke, and the woods still stand dark and unyielding. But Pinebrook holds its breath, waiting, because everyone knows the drone footage has changed everything. Rachel first learns about the footage at the local sheriff's office. Sheriff Callahan, gray-bearded and weary, shows her the grainy video on his laptop. "There," he mutters, pausing the drone feed. "You see it? Right there, behind the falls." Rachel leans closer. Her breath catches. A cabin, camouflaged by foliage. And movement, a figure, tall, standing in the doorway for just a second before retreating into shadow. Her pulse quickens. "Sheriff, you think that's connected to Lila?" He doesn't answer, but the silence says everything. Rachel decides to investigate. She visits Lila's mother, Evelyn, a woman worn thin by grief. Evelyn's house smells of lavender and dust, and every surface holds framed photos of her daughter. "She's not gone," Evelyn insists, her eyes sharp with certainty. "I know she's out there. I dream about her still." Rachel feels a pang of guilt. She'd promised herself she would never let Lila's memory fade, but life had swept her away. Now, standing in this room, she realizes Evelyn has never left the moment her daughter disappeared. Later, at the diner, Rachel overhears whispers. Some townsfolk believe the cabin is nothing but a hunting shack. Others claim the woods are cursed, that people vanish because they're meant to. And then there's Mr. Holbrook, a reclusive trapper, who mutters, "Ain't no cabin up there, unless someone don't want it found." Rachel's instincts sharpen. Something is wrong. At night, Rachel sits on her motel balcony, staring at the tree line. She hears something, faint, carried on the wind. A girl's laughter, high-pitched, fleeting. She shakes her head, telling herself it's just memory playing tricks. But deep inside, unease coils. Later, she finds an old note tucked inside her high school yearbook. "Meet me at the falls. Don't tell anyone." Signed with an L. She doesn't remember ever seeing it before. The handwriting is unmistakably Lila's. Rachel and Sheriff Callahan set out the next morning with a small search team. They trek through the forest, the earth damp and cold beneath their boots, the air heavy with the scent of wet leaves. The roar of the waterfall grows louder. When they reach the clearing, Rachel freezes. The drone footage was right. A structure stands hidden behind the cascading water, nearly invisible unless approached at the right angle. Its wood is rotted, its windows boarded. But there's a lock on the door. A new lock. Someone has been here recently. They force the door open. Inside, dust swirls in the flashlight beams. Old furniture sits covered in mold. But in the corner, Rachel sees something that makes her throat tighten. A child's dress. Faded pink. Torn at the hem. She steps closer. And then she notices the drawings pinned to the wall. Crayon sketches, hundreds of them. A girl's hand, scrawling forests, rivers, and a face. Rachel's face. Sheriff Callahan mutters under his breath, "Dear God." The realization crashes over Rachel. Whoever lived here had been watching. Not just Lila. Her too. Rachel storms back to town, confronting Mr. Holbrook outside his shack. "You knew," she accuses, voice shaking. "You knew someone was out there." Holbrook's eyes dart nervously. "Best leave it alone, girl. Some secrets in them woods don't want telling." She presses harder. "What happened to Lila?" Holbrook finally snaps. "You think she's the only one? Others went missing too. Men, women, kids, and they all trace back to that cabin." His voice drops. "But the one who built it? He ain't gone." Rachel's blood runs cold. That night, Rachel sits in her motel room, replaying the drone footage again and again. She zooms in on the shadow by the cabin door. The figure is tall, gaunt. But as the light catches for a brief second, Rachel sees the face. Not a stranger's. Someone she knows. Her hand trembles. She slams the laptop shut, her chest heaving. For 20 years, she thought she was chasing the ghost of her best friend. But now Rachel realizes she's being hunted. And the man behind it all might be someone she trusted her entire life. Rachel Monroe barely slept. All night, the image replayed in her mind. The drone footage, the shadowed face by the cabin door. And what shook her most was the unmistakable familiarity. This wasn't a stranger in the woods. This was someone from Pinebrook. Someone who had walked the same streets, eaten in the same diner, maybe even smiled at her family. Now, 20 years of unanswered questions had come roaring back. But Rachel was about to learn the most dangerous truth of all. Pinebrook doesn't want its secrets revealed. The morning fog clung low as Rachel drove the dirt road back toward the falls. Sheriff Callahan rode in the passenger seat, unusually silent. His eyes were fixed on the trees, as though they might be listening. "You didn't tell me what you saw," he finally said. Rachel gripped the wheel. "Because I'm not sure I believe it myself." "Believe it," Callahan muttered. "Out here, things get buried. People, too." The unease in his voice unsettled her, but she pressed forward, determined. At the cabin, they searched again. This time, Rachel noticed something she had missed. Fresh footprints leading away from the cabin toward a ridge. The prints were large, heavy, the soil still damp where they had pressed. Rachel crouched, tracing the outline. "These are recent, maybe a day old." Callahan's jaw tightened. "Whoever's been using this place, they know we're onto them." Then, from inside the cabin, Rachel found something else. A leather-bound notebook hidden under a loose floorboard. The pages were filled with shaky handwriting. Over and over again, a single phrase was scrawled. "She's still here. She belongs to me." Rachel's stomach turned. The she could only mean Lila. Back in Pinebrook, Rachel carried the notebook into the diner. As she slid into a booth, she noticed how quiet the room grew. People's eyes followed her, their conversations dropping to hushed murmurs. Finally, a man in his 40s, Dean Miller, stood and walked to her table. He leaned down, his voice low but sharp. "You need to stop this digging, Rachel. You don't know what you're stirring up." Rachel met his gaze. "Then why does it scare you?" Dean's face flushed. He opened his mouth to answer, but Sheriff Callahan stepped between them, his voice firm. "Enough. Sit down, Dean." The whole diner buzzed with tension. Everyone knew something, and nobody was talking. Later, Rachel visited Evelyn Carter again. She showed her the notebook. Evelyn's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. Then Evelyn did something unexpected. She disappeared into her bedroom and returned with an old cassette tape. "I found this in Lila's things after she vanished," she whispered. "Never told anyone. Didn't think it meant anything." Rachel slipped it into her recorder. The tape crackled. Then came Lila's voice, faint and frightened. "Mom, if anything happens to me, it's because of him." The tape cut off. Rachel's heart pounded. Who's him? But Evelyn only shook her head. That night, Rachel sat in her motel room, spreading the notebook pages across the bed. She flipped to the back cover and found something taped inside, a faded Polaroid. It showed a young girl, maybe 14, tied to a chair inside what looked like the very cabin they had found. Her face was swollen from crying, her hair tangled. It was Lila. Rachel's throat tightened, but then she froze, because in the edge of the photo, barely in frame, stood a man's hand resting on the chair. A gold ring glinted on his finger. Rachel knew that ring. She had seen it her entire childhood. The next morning, Rachel confronted Sheriff Callahan. She slammed the Polaroid onto his desk. "You wore this ring. All my life. It's yours." Callahan paled. His hand instinctively went to his finger, now bare. "Rachel, you don't understand." Her voice rose. "It's you. You took her." For a long moment, Callahan just stared, his face carved with guilt and something darker. Finally, he whispered, "I never touched that girl, but I know who did." Rachel's pulse hammered. "Then tell me." He looked away. "I can't. Not yet. He's still out there. And if you keep pushing, you'll end up just like Lila." Rachel refused to back down. That evening, she returned to the ridge alone, determined to follow the trail of footprints she had seen earlier. The forest was eerily quiet, the only sound the crunch of her boots on leaves. After an hour, she stumbled upon something she hadn't expected. Another structure. Not a cabin, an underground hatch, rusted and hidden beneath a pile of branches. Her hands shook as she pulled it open. The smell of mildew and damp earth wafted up. And then, a sound. A faint sob. "Hello?" she whispered into the darkness. The sobbing stopped. Then came a voice, hoarse and broken, "Help me." Rachel's blood turned cold. She descended into the darkness with her flashlight trembling. The beam revealed a narrow corridor of dirt walls. Chains hung from hooks. Old blankets littered the ground. And there, huddled in the corner, was a woman. Her hair was matted, her eyes wild, her clothes ragged. When Rachel lifted her face into the light, her breath caught. It wasn't Lila. It was someone else. Another missing woman from Pinebrook, one the town had buried in memory years ago. The woman clutched Rachel's wrist with surprising strength. "He's coming back," she whispered. "You need to leave. Now." Rachel froze. Footsteps echoed above, slow and deliberate, crunching on the leaves outside the hatch. A shadow fell across the opening. And in that instant, Rachel realized she wasn't supposed to find this place. She had walked straight into the monster's lair. Rachel Monroe stood frozen, her breath caught in her throat. The missing woman's grip still clung desperately to her wrist, but it wasn't her voice Rachel was listening to anymore. It was the footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching on leaves just above the hatch. The shadow shifted against the dim moonlight. Whoever it was, they knew someone had found their hiding place. Rachel's heart thundered. She had two choices: stay hidden and risk being trapped underground, or climb out and face the nightmare waiting above. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed down like a weight. Then, metal screeched. The hatch door began to close. No! Rachel lunged, shoving it back with all her strength. For a split second, she glimpsed a man's silhouette. Broad shoulders, a hood pulled low. "Who are you?" she shouted. No answer. Only the slam of boots retreating into the woods. Rachel scrambled out, gasping in the cold air. Her flashlight beam caught a trail, muddy prints leading deeper into the forest. Whoever it was, they were running. She followed, adrenaline pumping, branches slashing her arms as she tore through the underbrush. The woods felt alive, echoing with her ragged breaths and the crash of fleeing footsteps ahead. "Stop!" she yelled. Then, a flash of metal glinted in the dark. A bear trap snapped shut just inches from her boot. She froze, the jagged steel teeth gleaming in her light. Her stomach sank. He wasn't just running. He was luring her in. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Sheriff Callahan. She answered in a whisper. "I found another woman. She's alive." Callahan cut her off. "Rachel, where are you? Tell me now." But something in his tone made her pause. It wasn't concern. It was command. Desperate. Too desperate. She ended the call without answering. And in that silence, she realized, maybe she wasn't supposed to trust the sheriff either. Rachel returned to the underground room, helping the woman out. The woman's voice trembled. He told me about you. Said you'd come back one day. That he was waiting." Rachel's blood chilled. "Waiting? For me?" The woman nodded. "He said you were always the one he wanted." They fled back to Pinebrook under cover of night. At her motel, Rachel tried to calm the survivor long enough to ask questions. "Who is he?" Rachel pressed. "Do you know his name?" But the woman only rocked back and forth, muttering. So Rachel searched her own bag again. She pulled out the notebook she had taken from the cabin. This time, she noticed something odd. The back cover felt thicker than it should. She sliced it open. Inside was a hidden envelope stuffed with photos. All of girls. Different ages. Different years. All vanished from Pinebrook or nearby towns. And in the corner of each photograph, barely visible, was that same gold ring. Rachel spread the photos across the bed. There was Lila. There was the woman she'd just rescued. And others she didn't even recognize. Her hands shook as she realized the pattern. Every single disappearance traced back to Pinebrook. And every time, the sheriff had been on duty. Her chest tightened. Sheriff Callahan hadn't been protecting the town all these years. He had been protecting someone else. Or worse, covering for himself. Rachel couldn't wait any longer. She stormed into the sheriff's office just before dawn, slamming the photos on his desk. "You think you can bury this?" she demanded. "How many girls, Callahan? How many lives destroyed while you sat in this chair pretending to be the good guy?" Callahan's face hardened. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a low voice, he asked, "Where is she?" Rachel stiffened. "Who?" "The woman you pulled from that hole," he said, his voice rising. Where is she, Rachel? Her heart raced. He wasn't even trying to deny it. Rachel fled the office, her hands trembling. She needed help, someone who wasn't part of Pinebrook's twisted circle of silence. That's when she remembered Dean Miller, the man who had warned her in the diner. She found him working late at the mill. "You were right," Rachel said breathlessly. "Something's rotten here. The sheriff is hiding everything." Dean's eyes darkened. "I told you to stay out of it. But if you're in this deep, you'd better know. Callahan isn't the only one. He's just the leash. Someone else is holding the chain." Rachel swallowed hard. "Who?" Dean looked around, then leaned close. "You're not ready to hear that. Not yet. But when you are, meet me at the falls tomorrow night." Rachel returned to her motel, her mind spinning. But as she opened her door, she froze. The room had been ransacked, papers scattered. The survivor, the woman she had rescued, was gone. On the bed, a single Polaroid had been left behind. It showed Rachel herself, asleep in that very room, taken just hours before. Scrawled across the bottom in black ink were the words, "You're next." Rachel Monroe's motel room looked like a crime scene. Papers scattered, drawers overturned, curtains torn down. But all that mattered was the empty bed, where the survivor she had rescued should have been. Now she was gone, and on the blanket lay a Polaroid of Rachel herself, asleep, taken just hours earlier. The inked words beneath it seared into her mind. "You're next." For the first time, Rachel wasn't just chasing the truth. The truth was chasing her. Rachel bolted the door, her hands trembling as she dialed 911. But the call never connected, only static hissed in her ear. Then came a knock. 3 slow, heavy raps. She held her breath. The peephole showed nothing but shadow. "Rachel," a man's voice drawled. "Open up." Her stomach turned. It was Sheriff Callahan. Rachel didn't move. "Don't make this harder," Callahan continued, his tone sharp now. "You don't know what you're dealing with. You think this is about Lila? About one girl? No, Rachel. This goes deeper. You open that door, I'll explain everything." Rachel whispered through the door, her voice shaking. "You covered for him. For whoever took her." Silence. Then, a growl. "I did what I had to. For this town. For all of us." Her skin crawled. She backed away from the door, grabbing her bag. When she looked again, the shadow was gone. But the silence was worse than the knock. The next night, Rachel made her way to the falls to meet Dean Miller. The roar of water masked her footsteps as she found him waiting in the mist. "You brought trouble on yourself," Dean said, eyes scanning the tree line. "Now they'll never stop." "They?" Rachel demanded. "Who's they?" Dean's jaw clenched. "Callahan's just a pawn. The real man pulling strings, his untouchable. Old money. Owns half of Pinebrook. Everyone's been protecting him for decades." Rachel's breath caught. "Who?" Dean leaned closer. "Gareth Holloway." The name sent a chill through her. Holloway wasn't just anyone. He was Pinebrook's most respected benefactor. The man who donated to schools, built the hospital, paid for scholarships. The man everyone called a savior. But Rachel now understood. Saviors can wear masks. Rachel rushed to Evelyn Carter's home, desperate to know if she had heard the name before. Evelyn's frail hands gripped hers tightly. "Holloway," Evelyn whispered, eyes brimming with fear. Lila was terrified of him. She said he'd been following her. But who would believe a girl accusing a man like that? Rachel felt her chest tighten. Evelyn leaned forward, her voice dropping to a trembling whisper. "He told me once, your daughter's special." I thought he meant kind, gifted, but now I wonder if he meant something else. Dean slipped Rachel a USB drive that night. Proof, he said, but it's dangerous. I shouldn't even have this. Rachel plugged it into her laptop back at the motel. File after file popped up, police reports, photos, and transcripts spanning decades. All redacted, all signed off by Sheriff Callahan, and each tied to one man, Gareth Holloway. Her hands shook as she opened the last file. It wasn't a report, it was a video, a grainy recording from inside the cabin. The camera shook as a girl sobbed, begging for release. Then a figure stepped into frame. The lighting was poor, but the gold ring on his finger gleamed clearly. Rachel's stomach dropped. It wasn't Callahan. It wasn't Holloway. It was her father. Her world collapsed in an instant. Her father, John Monroe, the man who had raised her, who taught her to ride a bike, who read her stories by the fire. He was the shadow haunting Pinebrook all along. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth as tears stung her eyes. The video showed him speaking, his voice calm and chilling. She's not ready to leave yet. None of them are. They are mine. She slammed the laptop shut, her pulse hammering. How could this be true? And if her father was the one, then why had Callahan been covering for Holloway? Nothing made sense. Unless Holloway wasn't the abductor. He was the protector, protecting John Monroe. Rachel's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered with trembling hands. Her father's voice filled the line. Calm, steady. You were always too curious, Rachel. Just like her. Just like Lila. Her knees buckled. Dad, what did you do to her? A pause. Then, meet me. Alone. If you want the truth. If you want to see her again. The line went dead. Rachel sat in silence, her breath shallow. The files, the notebook, the Polaroids, everything pointed to her father. But one thing didn't fit. Evelyn's cassette tape. Lila had said, if anything happens, it's because of him. But she never said his name. And suddenly, Rachel wasn't sure anymore if her father was the only monster in Pinebrook, or just another pawn in something far larger. Rachel drove to the edge of town, headlights cutting through the night. She parked by the abandoned church, the meeting place her father had given her. As she stepped out, the wind howled through the broken steeple. And then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. It wasn't her father. It was Gareth Holloway, and he was smiling. Rachel Monroe stood frozen in the churchyard ruins, her breath fogging in the cold night air. The figure stepping out of the shadows was not her father. It was Gareth Holloway, Pinebrook's golden son, the town's benefactor, the man she had grown up seeing on stage at parades, shaking hands at fundraisers, smiling in the Sunday paper. And now here he was, alone, waiting for her. The smile he wore wasn't the smile of a savior. It was the smile of someone who had been waiting a very, very long time. Rachel, Holloway said smoothly, his voice low but commanding. I was hoping you'd be the one to find me here. I knew you'd dig deeper than the rest. Rachel's fists clenched. Where's my father? Holloway stepped closer, his shoes crunching over broken glass. Alive. For now. But John's a man who made mistakes. Mistakes I helped cover. For the town's sake. For your sake. Rachel's pulse raced. My sake. Yes, Holloway said with a faint smile. Because you're part of this whether you want to be or not. Rachel's voice shook. You destroyed lives. You took girls. You. No, Holloway interrupted sharply. Your father did that. Callahan cleaned it up. And he leaned closer. I kept Pinebrook standing. Without me, this town would have collapsed under scandal years ago. Rachel's stomach churned. You expect me to thank you? I expect you to understand, Holloway replied. You're not here to accuse me, Rachel. You're here to inherit what your father started. Rachel's breath caught. Inherit? Holloway's eyes glinted. This isn't about one cabin or one girl. This is a legacy, and it belongs to you. Before Rachel could respond, movement stirred in the shadows of the church. Evelyn Carter appeared, her frail frame trembling, eyes wide. Don't listen to him, Evelyn cried. He said the same to Lila before she disappeared. Promises of being special, promises of belonging. It's lies, Rachel. All of it. Holloway didn't even flinch. He only sighed, almost bored. Evelyn, you should have stayed quiet. Rachel stepped between them, her voice breaking. Tell me the truth. Did you take Lila? Did you keep her alive all these years? Holloway's smile never wavered. The truth? She was never meant to leave those woods. Rachel backed away, her flashlight beam cutting across the churchyard. And that's when she saw them. Freshly turned soil. 6 narrow mounds, each marked only by crude wooden crosses. Her throat tightened. Oh God! Evelyn fell to her knees, sobbing. But Holloway shook his head. Not what you think. Look closer. Rachel forced herself forward, brushing dirt from one of the crosses. Scratched into the wood was a name. Lila Carter. She staggered back. Every mound bore the name of a different girl. And one at the very end, Rachel Monroe. Her voice cracked. Why is my name here? Holloway stepped closer, his tone calm, almost fatherly. Because you were always meant to be part of this, Rachel. Your father couldn't finish what he started. But you can. You've been drawn back to Pinebrook for a reason. Rachel shook her head violently. No. No. I'm not like him. I'm not like you. Holloway tilted his head. Aren't you? You found the cabin. You found the files. You couldn't stay away. That hunger for the truth, it's the same hunger that drove him. Rachel's chest heaved. You're insane. Am I? Holloway smiled. Or are you finally seeing what you were always meant to become? Suddenly, headlights flared across the churchyard. A truck rumbled up, brakes squealing. Sheriff Callahan jumped out, his gun raised. Step away from her, Holloway. Rachel's head snapped between them. Wait, you're helping me now. Callahan's face was grim. I should have stopped this years ago. I let him run me like a dog. No more. But Holloway only chuckled. You'll never pull that trigger, Sheriff. You owe me too much. Rachel screamed. Stop. Just tell me where Lila is. Both men froze. And in that tense silence, a sound rose from beneath the church. A muffled cry. A voice. Rachel, help me. Rachel's knees buckled. The voice, it was Lila. She dropped her flashlight, rushing toward the sound. Callahan's gun swung back and forth between Holloway and the floor. Holloway only watched, smiling, as Rachel clawed at the rotted planks. Beneath them was a trapdoor. She yanked it open, her flashlight beam trembling over the darkness below. And there she saw her, Lila Carter. Pale, thin, shackled, but alive. Rachel's tears streamed. Lila, oh my God. But Lila's eyes widened in terror. She shook her head violently. No, Rachel, don't. Too late. Behind Rachel, the trapdoor slammed shut. The last thing she saw was Holloway's cold smile, and Lila's scream echoing from the dark. It's a trap. Darkness swallowed Rachel Monroe whole. The trapdoor slammed shut above her, sealing her underground with the one voice she had longed and feared to hear, Lila Carter's. Rachel's chest heaved as her flashlight beam flickered across damp stone walls. Chains bolted to the floor, and the frail figure of the girl who had vanished 20 years earlier. But Lila's eyes didn't hold relief. They held terror. "Rachel," she whispered, her voice cracking. "You never should have come here." Rachel rushed to her side, fumbling with the shackles that bound Lila's wrists. "I'm getting you out. Now. Hold on." Lila pulled back violently. "No, you don't understand. This place, it's not just his. It's theirs." Rachel froze. "Theirs? Who else?" Lila's face twisted with dread. "There are more. Holloway wasn't lying. Your father, Callahan, others. They built this together." The words sliced through Rachel like glass. No, that's not possible. But deep down, she already knew it was. A muffled argument erupted overhead. Sheriff Callahan's voice thundered. "Where is she? Holloway? Where's Rachel?" Holloway's cold laugh echoed through the floorboards. "Right where she belongs." Rachel pounded on the trapdoor. "Sheriff, I'm down here. Help us." The argument stopped. Then Callahan's voice dropped low. "Rachel, stay quiet. I'll get you out. But you have to trust me." Rachel's heart sank. Did she dare? She turned back to Lila, yanking at the rusted shackles. They wouldn't budge. Her flashlight beam caught faint carvings on the stone wall, names scratched by trembling hands. Dozens of them. Rachel traced one with her fingers. Each belonged to a missing girl. And all around them, silence. Lila whispered, "They're still here. Watching. Waiting." Rachel's flashlight flickered, then died. The underground chamber plunged into blackness. In the suffocating dark, Rachel heard it. The scrape of metal, the soft crunch of dirt. Not from above. From the far end of the chamber. Someone else was down there with them. Her voice trembled. "Who's there?" No answer. Only slow, deliberate footsteps moving closer. Lila's whisper cut the dark. "Run." Rachel fumbled desperately, her hands brushing cold stone until they found a wooden panel disguised as wall. She shoved it open, revealing a narrow tunnel stretching into darkness. She grabbed Lila's arm. "Come on, now." But Lila resisted, trembling violently. "I can't. If I leave, he'll kill us both." Rachel's voice broke. "He already will if we stay." With one last pull, she dragged Lila into the tunnel. Behind them, the footsteps grew faster. The tunnel led to a larger chamber. And there, lit only by candles stuck into the earth, stood a figure. Rachel froze. It wasn't Holloway. It wasn't Callahan. It was her father. John Monroe's face was pale, his eyes hollow, but his voice was steady. "Rachel, I told you one day you'd understand." Rachel's chest constricted. "Dad, what is this? What did you do to her?" He shook his head slowly. "Not just her. All of them. We were protecting something far greater than you realize." Lila sobbed. "His lying, Rachel. His always lying." Rachel's voice cracked as tears burned her eyes. "Protecting? By caging girls? By torturing them?" John stepped closer, his shadow stretching against the dirt walls. "You think it was torture. It was preservation. These woods, they demanded it. And we gave them what they asked for." Rachel's skin crawled. "You're insane." His voice dropped to a whisper. "No, I'm faithful." Suddenly, the chamber above shook with gunfire. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Callahan and Holloway were fighting. Rachel grabbed Lila's hand. We're leaving. Now. But as they turned toward the far tunnel, John's voice cut through the chaos. You walk away now, Rachel, and you'll never know the truth about who you are. Rachel froze. Her father's eyes locked on hers. You're not just my daughter. You're theirs. Before Rachel could react, the tunnel wall behind her split open, revealing a hidden passage filled with flickering lanterns. And in the glow stood 5 figures in cloaks, faces hidden, all wearing the same gold ring. One of them raised a hand. Welcome home, Rachel. Rachel Monroe thought she had uncovered the darkest truth already, her father's role in the disappearances that haunted Pinebrook. But when the wall split open to reveal 5 cloaked figures waiting in the lantern glow, she realized the nightmare had only just begun. And then came the words that chilled her to the bone. Welcome home, Rachel. The cloaked figures stepped forward in perfect unison. Their movements were precise, rehearsed, like a ritual performed countless times before. Each wore a heavy gold ring etched with an emblem, 2 interlocking trees, their roots entwined. Rachel tightened her grip on Lila's trembling hand. Who are you? She demanded. A woman's voice emerged from the leader, calm and steady. The Guardians of Pinebrook. The same Guardians your father swore allegiance to, and the Guardians you were always destined to join. Rachel's throat tightened. I'm nothing like you. Her father, John Monroe, moved between them. His face was pale, but his tone was pleading. Rachel, please listen. I tried to shield you from this your whole life, but you've always felt it, haven't you? The pull of these woods, the whispers when you walk alone. Rachel's chest heaved. That's not destiny, that's fear, and I'm done letting it control me. Lila tugged at her sleeve, whispering, we need to run. But the cloaked figures were already closing in, cutting off every exit. Rachel's eyes darted across the cavern. Carvings on the walls, symbols she had seen before, in her childhood sketches, in her dreams. 2 trees, roots knotted together. Her father's voice dropped to a near whisper. Those marks? You drew them as a child, Rachel, before you even knew what they meant. Don't you see? It's in your blood. Rachel's stomach turned. She remembered the drawings. The nights she woke from sleepwalking, her hands stained with charcoal. Could it be true? The woman in the cloak stepped forward, lowering her hood. Silver hair framed a face both stern and elegant. You are one of us, she said. You will either embrace what you are, or you will feed the forest, like the others. Lila gasped, pulling Rachel back. Don't listen. It's a lie. They've been killing girls for decades, feeding them to something in the woods. That's all this is. Rachel's hands trembled. What do you want from me? The woman smiled faintly. We want your choice. Rachel spotted a worn leather book on a pedestal near the chamber's edge. She lunged forward, grabbing it before the cloaked figures could stop her. Dust billowed as she flipped it open, her breath catching at what she saw. Page after page of names, dates, rituals, each entry describing a girl offered to the roots in Pinebrook's woods. And near the end, her own name, written 20 years ago. Rachel whispered, No, this means I was supposed to be taken too. Her father's voice broke. I stopped them that night. I gave them Lila instead. I saved you, Rachel. Lila's eyes filled with horror. You traded me for your daughter. The room fell silent, broken only by Lila's ragged breathing. John Monroe stepped closer, tears streaking his face. It was the only way. You were chosen, but I couldn't lose you. I couldn't let them have you. Rachel's world tilted. The truth slammed into her like a blade. Her survival had always been bought with Lila's suffering. Dad, her voice cracked. You didn't save me. You condemned her." The cloaked leader raised her hand. "Enough. The offering failed 20 years ago. Tonight, the balance will be restored. Either she comes willingly, or both of you will take her place." Rachel's grip on the journal tightened. "Over my dead body." The figures stepped closer, their gold rings glinting in the candlelight. Lila clung to Rachel's arm, her whisper desperate. "They'll kill us both. We have to go now." Rachel's pulse thundered. The tunnel behind the cloaked figures was the only way out, but her father was standing directly in their path. A sudden gunshot split the chamber. Sparks rained down from the stone. Sheriff Callahan's voice thundered from the shadows. "Nobody moves." His gun was raised, aimed straight at the cloaked leader. Rachel exhaled in relief, until she saw the flash of gold on his hand. A matching ring. Callahan's gaze flicked to Rachel, his face darkening. "You should have never come back here," he growled. The cloaked figures stepped aside, making room for him. And then Callahan lowered his gun, not at them, but at Rachel. "Tonight," he said coldly, "the forest finally gets what it was promised." The chamber went silent. Rachel's breath caught in her throat as Callahan pulled the trigger. Cut to black. The deafening gunshot echoed through the chamber. Rachel's heart stopped. Had Sheriff Callahan just ended her story before it truly began? But when her eyes flew open again, she realized something was wrong. She was still alive. The bullet hadn't struck her. Instead, her father was sprawled on the ground, clutching his chest, blood blooming across his shirt. He had taken the bullet meant for her. Rachel dropped to her knees beside him. "Dad!" His breaths were ragged, shallow. He gripped her hand with surprising strength. "I couldn't protect you before, but I can now." Tears blurred her vision. "Why, Dad? After everything you did, why now?" His lips trembled as he whispered, "Because no matter my sins, you're my daughter. And I love you." His hand went limp. His eyes glazed over. The chamber fell silent, save for the sound of Rachel's sobs. Callahan stepped forward, his gold ring glinting in the firelight. His voice was ice. He was weak, always torn between the oath and his blood. "You, Rachel, will not be afforded the same choice." The cloaked figures encircled her and Lila. Their shadows stretched across the cavern walls, monstrous and consuming. Rachel's grief boiled into fury. She stood, clutching the blood-stained journal like a weapon. "You've stolen girls, destroyed families, and you think it's destiny? No, it's cruelty dressed as tradition." Rachel grabbed Lila's hand and sprinted for the tunnel. Callahan's shot rang out, sparking against stone inches from her head. "Stop them!" he roared. The cult members lunged forward, but Rachel ducked, weaving between them. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she didn't stop. The tunnel twisted upward, toward faint moonlight spilling in through a crack in the rock. "Go, Lila!" she shouted. "Climb!" They scrambled toward the light as footsteps thundered behind them. They emerged into the heart of the forest, beneath the towering trees that had loomed over Pinebrook for centuries. Rachel froze. At the base of the waterfall, roots as thick as tree trunks twisted from the earth, writhing unnaturally. They pulsed with a faint glow, as if alive. Lila clutched her arm. "That's what they've been feeding. The forest itself." Rachel's stomach churned. It wasn't just superstition. The cult had been feeding something real, something ancient. Callahan burst into the clearing, his gun raised. "You see it now, don't you? The forest demands balance. And tonight, you'll give it what it's owed." Rachel held up the journal, pages fluttering in the wind. "This book isn't prophecy. It's a ledger of your crimes. Every name here is a girl you murdered. She hurled it into the waterfall. The leather smacked the rocks, pages scattering like leaves before vanishing into the torrent. Callahan's face twisted in rage. "Foolish girl, you've doomed us all." Rachel's voice cracked, but her resolve was steady. "No, I've freed them." The roots shuddered violently, pulling back into the earth as if rejecting the cult's power. The ground trembled, cracks splitting across the forest floor. The cloaked figures screamed as the ground swallowed them whole. Callahan fired blindly, but the earth split beneath him, dragging him into the darkness. His screams faded into silence. Rachel and Lila clung to each other, stumbling toward higher ground as the forest convulsed. The waterfall roared louder, cleansing the blood-soaked earth below. The symbols carved into the cavern walls shattered and crumbled. The curse, or whatever force had haunted Pinebrook, was breaking. Hours later, Rachel and Lila sat at the edge of the forest, the first light of dawn washing over them. The woods were quiet now, peaceful, almost. Lila leaned against her, voice trembling. "It's over, isn't it?" Rachel stared into the horizon. "Maybe not over, but the cycle is broken, and we're free." She reached for Lila's hand, squeezing it tight. Rachel turned to her, eyes glistening. "You know, I spent my whole life running from the past, pretending the shadows weren't there. But tonight I learned something. You don't escape darkness by hiding from it. You defeat it by dragging it into the light." She paused, her father's final words echoing in her mind. "Family isn't about blood. It's about the choices we make, the people we protect, even when it costs us everything." Lila whispered, "Then what do we do now?" Rachel smiled faintly, though her voice was heavy with meaning. "We rebuild. We tell the truth. And we make sure no one ever suffers the way we did. You don't escape darkness by hiding from it. You defeat it by dragging it into the light. Family isn't about blood. It's about the choices we make, the people we protect, even when it costs us everything. Tradition without compassion is just cruelty wearing a mask. The past doesn't define us. What we do next does. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing love in the face of it."
Some cases find justice, others are left in silence. But together, we can keep their stories alive. If you felt the weight of this mystery, make sure to subscribe, like, and hit the bell, so you'll always be here when the next truth surfaces. Every voice matters. Every story counts. Step closer, behind the crime.